Hello everyone, welcome to Bar Student to Barrister. This is episode 2 of this podcast. You heard last week about bar training. We are today jumping into something really exciting. We are going to be speaking to Gaurav Sachanandani, who is an ICA Bar Course graduate, who I know has an awful lot of interesting things to tell you. Welcome, Gaurav. It's an absolute pleasure to see you.
Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. Before we move on, I just want to read out, if you don't mind, something from your website, which I think is an extremely impressive introduction to you. It says this: Gaurav is a dedicated tax specialist with a rapidly developing practice spanning domestic and international matters. He read law at the age of 17 as a Vice Chancellor's International Scholar at Cardiff University, graduating with first-class honours, and was called to the bar at 21. Alongside his bar studies, he worked under one of the country's leading tax silks. During his pupillage, Gaurav gained a substantial experience across complex tax disputes, advising on corporate tax, VAT, and individual taxation. His work has covered issues of tax residence, offshore structures, and anti-avoidance provisions. He is particularly skilled in drafting detailed legal opinions and skeleton arguments for high-stakes litigation in the first-tier tribunal and the Insolvency and Companies Court. So, Gaurav, wow, I've got to say that, especially coming from a background myself as a criminal practitioner who really knows nothing about taxation other than when the bill arrives, of course, at the beginning of January and the beginning of June each year. What drew you to practice as a tax specialist?
First of all, again, thank you for having me. Thank you for reading that introduction. It just feels so good reading. So somebody else reading that back to me instead of me obsessing over my own website profile. Tax. I wanted to do tax, and I'm doing tax now because I think of one person, the tax that I work for. And I got to that stage by doing a lot of mini pupillages, as any bar student or law student would try to do. And I did it in every possible sphere you can imagine.
I'm going to have to jump in. How many mini pupillages did you do?
I can't remember the exact number. I'd say around 6 to 8.
I ask you that because I'm asked that question all the time. So around 6 to 8. That's really helpful.
Around 6 to 8, yes. But there was a method to the madness. It wasn't just applying to a lot of mini pupillages. It was trying to discount the practice areas that I wouldn't want to practice in. So, for example, and I'll get to the tax answer. I appreciate. I'll give you.
I like a long answer, as you know, because I give them all the time.
Yes. My first ever mini pupillage was at Burnell Chambers, just down the road on Fleet Street, and I was in the Court of Appeal with Chirag Karia KC, doing maritime and shipping, and I at that stage thought that was going to be my life. I was going to do maritime law because it's tough. I like it. And I went to the Court of Appeal. It was a great case, sharp v. Terra. It went up to the Supreme Court as well, but I found it, to put it mildly, not interesting. The work that was done in the Court of Appeal, I understood the points, but it wasn't really exciting. It was the same thing, I think, over and over again. I do remember the facts of the case. It was a shipping of, I think, beans from Canada to India. And I thought, okay, I've done this mini pupillage. I really don't want to practice in this area. Let's
Want to practice in beans?
No, don't want to practice in beans, precisely. Don't want to just deal with contractual issues with bills of lading and insurance. I think I didn't want that practice. I wasn't that interested after the mini pupillage. Then I went and did a planning mini pupillage, planning law, and it was sort of online. And they made us do this exercise. Again, I thought, not okay. I can see why some people would like it.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. So that then led me on to my tax pupillage, tax mini pupillage, in the final sort of year of my law school, and I remember emailing Mr. David Goldberg KC at Gray's in Tax, and I said, "Respected sir, I'd like a mini pupillage. I've never really done tax. I just want the experience." I was very honest. It wasn't like I've wanted to become a tax lawyer since I was 13 or something.
Yeah.
And he said, "You have a great CV. Call me." And I was like, "Okay, I'll call." I called him up, and he very quickly recognized that I knew nothing about tax. I knew nothing about him. I was just trying to get a mini pupillage for my CV, which was right. Yes. And he said, "I can give you a week." And I went into his chambers for a week, and it was very, very grand chambers. It was right next to the Bank of England, not in the inns. And I started reading the papers, and the file was about 900 to 1,000 pages long.
So he gave you a brief that he was working on.
Yes, it was.
And I appreciate, obviously, we can't talk because
No,
of the rules about confidentiality. About just to let the listeners know, we can't go into details about cases. That's one of the professional ethical duties as barristers that we have.
Yes.
But nonetheless, you got 1,000-page, presumably because it's tax. I would say it's about anything to do with tax.
Yeah.
Relatively complex case, was it?
Yes, relatively complex case. And I got sat in his room. He handed me the papers. He's like, "Read this." And he said, "I tell this to everyone who does a mini pupillage with me. Do not try to impress me. Just read it." And of course, I tried to impress him. And I started reading everything. Each and every thing was underlined. I was trying to understand the structure, and I got up every 5 minutes. What about this? And what about that?
Yeah.
And he was very kind in answering the questions. 30 minutes down the line, he says, "Perhaps I sort of didn't explain it very well. I think just read the whole thing." I thought, 1,000 pages?
You'll be here for a week.
Yeah, I'd be here for a week, which is what you'd call me for. But in that sequence of me asking questions, he said something which sort of stuck with me. He said, "You understand it. That's very good. You seem to understand the structure."
Just to help me with this, he knew you understood it. How? Did he question you about it? Did he ask you to draw a summary of it? Just help us with that.
When I was asking the questions, I started asking the questions about the structure. So, okay, A is B, B is C, C is D. How do we get to Z? And I was trying to connect the dots, and he said, I can see that you understand it. But that small comment, which was not very material, I think, to him, it was very material to me.
I bet it was.
Oh, okay, I can do this. And then 3 days into that mini pupillage, I thought I'd better ask him if I can stay him for longer than just a week. And I went up to him and I said, I had prepared everything in my head, ready to be rejected. But I went up to him and I said, "Oh, I see a lot of papers around your chambers. Do you have a lot of work until December or this year?" And he said, yes, of course. And I said, "Do you need an assistant to help you with it?" And he smiled and he said, "That was a good one. Let me think about it." And for the next day, I said, "Have you thought about it?" He said, "I'm still thinking." And the next day, I finally started convincing him, I'll only do 3 days a week. I'll do part-time while I'm studying for the bar. He said, "We can do 1 day a week." And I said, yes.
Well,
that's what led me into tax. But to answer the question, why tax? I think it was because of the difficulty, the 1,000 pages, and I couldn't crack the code like I could in different mini pupillages.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, this is interesting. This excites me. I can see how I could spend all my time chasing my own tail by trying to sort of solve this problem.
I love that. We'll go through more, of course, about how you got to where you are now. But I haven't heard that before, but I really like the concept. Do you, when you look at a brief, think, I'm going to crack the code?
Yes, depends on the brief, obviously.
Yeah.
If I know what the question is, what the answer is, then it's more of okay, I need to follow the steps to get a skeleton argument out or something like that. But if it's a advisory point, which I'm dealing with right now, then I think in terms of how do I get what I want? What are the elements involved in this? What do I need to consider? And it's just constantly talking with people who are far better than me at this and who have been in this career all their lives and just throwing ideas at them. And there's no shame in that. At least for me, they might think, oh my God, what a stupid person just asking me stupid questions. But for instance, one of the people I'm currently working with, I just keep asking him questions about a particular problem we are trying to solve. So I think in those terms where how do I solve it? How do I get out of this situation? How do I help the client get out of this situation? Or how do I mitigate any possible liability down the road, or help him in that aspect or this aspect, or help her in that aspect? So it's more of it's like a puzzle. And that's a cliche in the tax world, I know. Anybody watching who's a tax professional know, yes, we've all said that in a pupillage interview.
Right.
But it is that. It's the difficulty of getting to the answer. And that, I think, comes from the nature of the tax legislation. Because they've tried to come at you from each and every direction, you have to avoid certain aspects. I'm not saying avoid tax. I'll never say that. It's in the sense, okay, if I go down that path, I have this legislation to keep in mind. Okay, I know that. But then what if I take a right turn? Then I have another legislation to keep in mind. And that makes it complex and interesting, I think. Yeah.
So in many ways, to break that down, it's the complexity of the material you're working with and the intellectual challenge that you face in advising your clients appropriately.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. So in this podcast, we are looking at people's journeys, essentially, from, as it's called, bar student to barrister. But I want to take you even before bar student. I know from the introduction I read out moments ago, Gaurav, that you did a law degree.
Yes.
And you did it at Cardiff University.
Yes.
Around half of the people that come to the bar come from essentially a non-law degree, and then they do a conversion course. So some people come to it a little later, and there's no disadvantage to that approach. But why did you choose to do a law degree? And I'm going to also ask you this because it fascinates me. How did you know at the age of 17 that you wanted to do a law degree?
Well, thank you for the question. Let me start by saying I'm the COVID batch. So I'm the COVID batch of international.
The COVID batch,
yes,
right? Okay.
We call ourselves the COVID batch.
Okay.
Now. The COVID batch of international baccalaureate exams. So before university, just stepping back, I was in boarding school for 2 years in India, and my final exams were supposed to be in 2020. When the world shut down. So they pretty much said, we are not going to have your final written exams, but you're going to get your grades based on your predictives in IB. And at that stage, I was at home. I was very happy I didn't have to give any exams, which my parents weren't very happy about that. And I started watching this American TV show called Suits. And after the first episode, I ran out from my room to the drawing room and I said to my father, I think I want to do law. And he said, okay, I'll support you in that. So if you want to go back to why I decided to do law at the age of 17, this was it. It was one episode of Suits and I thought I could be that guy.
Because you were able to visualize yourself in that particular play. It's a question, I mean, I'm really interested in this. It's a question I ask a lot of people, often, which is, what do you visualize when you think of becoming a barrister? And very often it's, in they're wearing their wig and they're in front of a jury with the gowns swaying after them and all of that. So it's a dramatic scene, if you like. It's quite interesting. Yours, my era would probably be LA law. It's well before your time. But same type of concept. You were really energized by what you were viewing on a day-to-day basis. Did you just see yourself as that lawyer whizzing about representing people all over the place? Was that the thing?
Yes, solving cases like Harvey Specter.
Yes.
Or memorizing everything like Mike Ross, or doing the numbers like Lewis Litt. I was fascinated, and I thought why not law? I didn't actually have.
So you just thought, why not law? Why not law?
Why not law?
Yeah. Okay.
It was a decision that wasn't. I know some of my peers thought about becoming a barrister since they were 13 and 14. I never had that. I wanted to become an astronomer when I was 13, or go into the Indian Administrative Services when I was that age. I never thought about doing law. I never dreamed about becoming a lawyer when I was a kid. I saw this, I visualized myself as a lawyer in suits. I know that's not real, but and I said to my father, I think I want to do law, and he said yes.
So some of the biggest decisions are actually casually taken.
And you'll see that theme once you start poking into my life later on. It's very casually taken decisions, and it works somehow.
It feels right at the time.
It feels right
At an intuitive level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a gut instinct to just keep running after it, which I think, okay, I know what I need to do for the next 3 years now.
Okay. That is fascinating. So that drew you to Cardiff University.
Yes, I did have offers from Australian universities, and I was trying for Indian universities as well. As I mentioned about the predictives, what happened there was a worldwide reduction in marks. My predictors were something else. I got something lower than expected, and I just missed the Cardiff offer by about 3 points. And then there was a worldwide revision of the IB grades, and I got exactly what Cardiff needed.
So you got into Cardiff.
I got into Cardiff, and my first year was obviously online.
Yeah.
So when I was 17, starting my law degree, I was back home because you weren't allowed to.
Watching Suits.
We were watching Suits, yes, and trying to understand criminal law. But I wasn't. Nobody was allowed to travel in 2020 and 21. So I actually flew in to the UK for the first time in 2021, if I'm not remembering this wrong. It was my second year.
Sure. Okay. And so you spent years 2 and 3 of your degree living at least part of the time in Cardiff. Okay. Got your first class degree. Congratulations.
Got my first class degree. It was a conscious choice to select the subjects that were, again, the toughest. In my second year, I chose commercial law and public international law. In my final year, I took IP law. My friends said, "Don't do it. It's the toughest one." I said, "Bet I'm gonna do it because it's the toughest one."
Yeah, of course.
And company law. I got a first class, and which, in hindsight, when I went into tax, it made a lot of sense that I liked tax, because I liked all these subjects that are not necessarily tax, but are always connected to tax disputes: company law, equity and trusts, IP law in some cases where you have transfer of intellectual property rights cross-border. So
I think it's worth mentioning. You raise a really interesting point that whatever your pinpoint specialism is, in fact, it embraces many areas of law. So there's no such thing as just tax law. As you've just very nicely described, actually, there's lots of other things you need to do. And because you obviously had done those naturally as an undergraduate, presumably you fell into that quite well as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Let me ask you about this, because you get to the end of your law degree, you've got to then make a decision about your future.
Yes.
Because I've spoken to you before, Gaurav, I know that there are a number of options that you'd set out for yourself at that stage. As I hasten to mention, I know that you came to the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, the ICCA, to do your bar training. As I always say on this podcast, there's multiple other providers of bar training, but you did choose to come up. So I'm going to ask you why that was. But also, before you take us through that, just tell us a bit about these options that you set out for yourself as to what your future was going to hold post law degree.
Well, when I was consulting my parents after my bachelor's as to what to do next, the plan was I wanted to do the bar over here. there's a whole story behind why I did not want to become a solicitor. We can explore that. But and they said, why not you do your master's first, like most people do, and then do the bar. So I applied to all the wonderful colleges, universities. I applied to Oxford, Cambridge, King's College, London School of Economics.
Yeah.
I had a first class, so I thought naturally I'd get in, but I did not. I faced rejections even after a first class from Oxford and Cambridge. And ICCA had already accepted me by then. I'd done my interview. I'd done my
You've
7
been
minute.
through the whole process. Okay.
Yes, my oral and written advocacy. I remember that application. And I convinced my parents that instead of going for the masters this time, there was again a gut instinct which said, if I lose ICCA this time around, maybe I don't know what will happen next year. Let's just go for it. And they said, okay, sure, yes. And this is happening at the same time I'm in the Silk's office trying to convince him, can I work for you?
Sure.
So it worked out so well. From September 2023, I believe, when I started my bar course, I was doing the first part while every Tuesday I was in chambers just reading. There was no responsibility like a junior would have responsibility of the case. It was more sort of getting to understand how to pick up the problems in tax disputes while I'm studying the CPR and
Sure.
the criminal procedures as well. So it, in hindsight, again, worked out extremely well.
So you raised in answering that question that you said perhaps we'll come to it. You didn't want to become a solicitor. My next question for you is actually, why did you want to become a barrister? So can you incorporate that into that? Essentially, the process you went through. I remember, albeit I don't like to think about how long ago this was, but doing the same thing and really doing a law degree without, again, in slightly casual way, I suspect, not really thinking long and hard enough, as I would probably expect undergraduates to do now, about what the long-term implications were, practicalities were, i.e. what job was I going to go for at the end of it? I don't think I thought about that enough. And so the way I dealt with it is actually, I did mini pupillages just as you've described, not in tax, I hasten to add. I knew that wasn't going to be my bag. But I also worked with solicitors as well, so I could get a concept. In fact, I went to Clifford Chance for a summer scheme. They put me in their aircraft finance department for the first 2 weeks, which I thought was crazy. And they gave me a big 1,000-page contract to read as well. And I said, what am I meant to do with this? Anyway, that's another story. This is about you, not about me. But why did you dismiss the concept of becoming a solicitor, and what drew you towards the bar?
So because my first year was online, there wasn't much to do careers wise. Usually when you're in and around university, you can talk to people, you can go to careers fair and figure out what you want to do. So I'd discount my first year from this conversation because I absolutely had no idea at the tender age of 17 if I wanted to become a solicitor or a barrister. In my second year, I saw most of my class applying for a training contract.
Yeah.
And when I say most, there were a handful of people who were very proud and strongly said, no, I want to become a barrister. I never explored that area in my second year. And I started applying for training contracts. And I applied to this firm called Inns & Co. I did an internship there. It wasn't a vacation scheme, but it was a 1-week internship
Okay.
in their shipping department. That's where the shipping law comes
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
And once I did that, and I was going through the stages of their application process, the firm sadly collapsed. As in, they were into, I think they were liquidated. And there were quite a lot of issues around the firm. So I never heard the response to my final stage ever from them. And I took that as a sign that maybe I'm not meant to become a solicitor. At the same time, in August of 2022, this is again first, second year area, and I'm starting my third year. One of my friends took me to a coffee sort of shop, and we were just sitting around waiting for our third year to start. And he said, "Why don't you become a barrister?" And I had absolutely no idea what sort of that was. And I said, "Okay, what do I have to do?" He explained to me the concept of the Inns of Court. He was going to join in a temple, and he said, just look at it. You're self-employed. You don't have any overlords above you telling you what to do. And he made it sound like it's the best thing. It is the best thing, I must I must add. And I thought, okay, let me explore this. So I remember that date very well, because he actually took a video of me saying a snap of say, convincing Gaurav to become a barrister. I have that in my camera roll. And then I started exploring what all the inns were on that day. Gray's Inn sounded the coolest. Gray's just sort of resonated with me. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who wrote the Constitution of India, was a member. So Winston Churchill was a member. FDR was a member. So I thought naturally, I think the people I admire, I'd join Gray's Inn. Started applying for scholarships. That's when I started doing all the mini pupillages. This is all final year of law school.
Sure.
And
You're
that,
building up your bar CV, joining it
yes,
in as a student member, building up your bar CV, building up towards what you then knew was going to be well, you hoped your practice at the bar.
yes. And third year was the first time applying for pupillage as well. So again, I saw suits. I wanted to become a lawyer. One of my friends sat me down and said, "I think you should become a barrister." I said, "Okay, why not a barrister? Why do I have to be stuck at only one choice of becoming a solicitor?" That was it. That sort of set me off behind obsessively, I might add, behind this goal of becoming a barrister. There wasn't no grand plan. I never imagined myself in wigs and gowns. I actually don't own one, because at the tax bar,
You don't need one.
You don't need one at the tax bar. But that was about it.
I mean, you know, there's in every single episode of a podcast, there's always one of those wow moments, and that is a barrister who doesn't own a wig and gown. Well, if any of your clients get caught up for contempt of court, I think in those scenario, you will have to get a wig and gown. So I'll take you down to Eden Ravenscroft.
Yes.
There are other providers of wigs and gowns, I hasten to add, and we'll get you one then, Gaurav. And that will be another film that we can take. Okay, and I guess a lot of people, when they get to the stage of they're going through their bar training, the prize that they have their eye on, of course, is pupillage. You're applying into a very competitive area of work. Did you essentially have it in the bag and only apply to one set of chambers with the gentleman that you've been working with, or did you spread your wings a bit?
I definitely spread my wings in that sense. My tax applications, my applications to tax chambers came during my bar school, because at that time I started working for the Silk, and I thought, okay, I think this is it. I know what I want to do. But being the kind of guy I am, I applied to all the tax sets in the country.
Okay.
And
But in London and elsewhere?
There are no sort of tax specialist sets elsewhere.
Right. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. So essentially, you felt that you were constrained to working in
yes, and I was constrained to 5 sets who were taking application at that time. I can't remember. Maybe it was 5 or 4, but essentially, there's only a few chambers who do only tax.
And that's what you wanted. So,
Yes.
so you did your research. You knew where you wanted to apply, and you put in your applications.
Yes, but I was also careful enough to understand and conscious to the fact that given there are 5 chambers and a lot of people are applying, I need to diversify. So the step down from tax, or I shouldn't say step down. It was the other option.
Sideways.
Sideways. Yes, precisely. Sideways was chancery sets.
Okay.
So in all, I made my applications to 12 sets of chambers. and out of that, 4, I think, or 5 were tax sets. The rest were chancery chambers. I got interviewed by a chancery set as well. It was, I think, 10 old square. 10 old square is a chancery set. But they rejected me because after the interview, they said, "Do you have any questions?" That dreaded.
That's often where people let themselves down. Yeah.
Exactly. And I let my guard down and I said, "If I join your chambers, will you let me practice tax?"
Right.
And their feedback was, "Gaurav, you were good, but you're too into tax."
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, I'm laughing because it's a great reason to be rejected for a really good set of chambers, and that you're too into tax.
You're too into tax.
Wow, that's really interesting. It is a point I think that's worth raising for everyone on this. That danger moment. Do you have any questions? I say that is a danger moment. Think carefully about what you're going to say at that particular stage. In many ways, however, I would say the fact that on the one hand, people might say, well, you let yourself down, you didn't get that pupillage. You didn't really want that pupillage.
No.
It wasn't really what you wanted.
No.
So it naturally, I guess you sieved yourself out of that particular set.
Yes.
Yeah.
Subconsciously.
Subconsciously.
Subconsciously, my mind was like, I don't think, despite analyzing the problem question, I think we need to ask them if they will ever let me have a tax practice. I can't remember why I asked that, but yeah, so I didn't just limit myself to the
At least it
chambers.
wasn't a criminal set. I mean, that would, yeah. Anyway, yes. No, that's fascinating. Sorry, I interrupted.
No. I was just saying, to answer your question precisely, I didn't limit myself to the one chambers where I was in every Tuesday. I applied to other tax sets as well. I got interviewed at other tax sets, and I got one pupillage out, just one pupillage out of it. Yeah.
Very often, do you mind if I ask you about the, without giving perhaps too much away, I'll answer it as you can. But when you go, we're talking about applications to chancery sets and to specialist tax chambers. Very often when you're applying for pupillage, you do an online application. I'm assuming that's what you did. And then you're invited to what's often referred to as a first round interview. And a first round interview, is it right for you, a bit of a sieving exercise, see what you like, ask a few basic questions. And then if they like what they see and they think you're intelligent and sensible, then they invite you for really to go more into the lion's den, because that's where they really find out more about you. Is that a fair representation of what happened to you, or not?
I think generally speaking, yes, you would have the problem question. For instance, Pumco Tax is one of the biggest tax chambers. When I was doing my application to them, it starts out by saying you have to do a problem question. You have to provide an answer.
That's before you even go in for an interview?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to answer a problem question. I answered the problem question and you're marked on it. And everybody's, I think, given a grade. I can't speak to the internal policies. But then you're invited to a first round interview. And in that first round interview, I remember I was in my student accommodation. And you get, I think I got about 40 minutes to an hour where I had to analyze a set of statutory provisions. And they had put in questions as well. So statutory provisions, questions, each question has the allocated marks next to it. And they'll ask you that, and then you have to give your answer, and they'll ask you further questions on that answer as well. I think there was about 2. I can't remember how many problem questions there were, but you're given time to prepare. So like 40 minutes, and then you have to do your interview. I had one silk and one junior for my Pumco tax interview. That was one first round. If you pass that, I did not pass that. If you pass that, you then go on to, I think, the final round.
Okay.
At that particular set. But for Chancery, it was different. I sent in my application as to why I'd be a good Chancery lawyer.
Yeah.
I was very open with them in the sense I have all the tax experience, but that sort of feeds into Chancery because tax falls under the umbrella of Chancery law. And the basic tools of analyzing problems is very similar. In that particular interview, first round interview, you get ushered in, you get given I think it was a partnership agreement or something like that. It was a problem,
Mm.
a problem question, and you have to, or I had to. Again, there were questions were laid out. I had to answer those questions, think about those questions, and when you went in, there were three people sitting at this nice long table as we have here, and they said you have to pretend that this is a client conference and advise us
Okay.
what are the answers to the questions and what do you think. But they say that, but they'll start asking you questions. They'll say, okay, but what about X and what about Y? And they'll start poking holes in the answers. Have you thought about Z point? And then you have to think about it in that instance and start answering. But I remember at the Chancery said they asked me some personal questions as well. Why do you like playing chess? Why do you, basic questions that you put in your application, so it's hinged to your application. Same with Pumco tax. They asked me about my mini pupillages. Gray's in tax was very different. It was you put in an application, you go into the first round. Again, you're given a statutory provision.
Yeah.
You have to interpret it. You have to think about the answers. And this time around, there were two silks and one junior for my first round interview at Gray's in tax. And I did not pass that, but it was a difficult exercise, and it is meant to be a difficult exercise to sift people out who can't think like tax lawyers do, or don't show the potential. They don't expect you to be completely prepared for the tax bar, but they just want to see if you have the potential to interpret stuff like they do. Like
Absolutely.
so, I think that was essentially the process for tax and chancery pupillages.
And I guess I certainly remember this when I was applying for pupilages, but you actually grow in the process, don't you? You grow in confidence.
Yes.
You're learning about the process, and therefore you become innately more prepared as you pursue that particular path.
Yes. And for interviews, I was doing my part two of ICCA
Yeah.
at that time.
It was a
And
busy time, isn't it, when that
it
happens?
was a busy time because you not only have to prepare for classes each week, as in you're handed out the briefs for the criminal class, for the civil advocacy submissions, but also you have to prepare for the interviews, which is representative, I think, of the workload at the bar. I'm not less busy now. I'm in fact more busy. But for the interviews, I developed as I did more interviews, and it's a very chicken and egg point, because how do you get to the interviews if you don't actually properly apply yourself in the written advocacy stage? But then once you get it, then after the first one, you understand what was actually needed of you and what was not needed of you. And in the second one, you grow again. For instance, in one of my interviews, my feedback was that I felt in one of my interviews, the feedback was I gave up points too quickly. And that's
Okay.
one of the things they judge you on. How quickly are you going to agree with the judge if they actually push you,
Okay.
right? But and I took that and I went into my second interview where I personally thought I came off as too dismissive of their arguments. I thought, no, no, I'm right. And I stood my ground this time around. But I think they thought he doesn't have the ability to maneuver out of a point.
Okay.
So two sides of the same coin. But again, you have to be present in the moment to understand what's required. And those were the two big mistakes I made in two different interviews.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you that you grow with the interviews. And I think my fourth interview was the best one because I got the pupillage.
That's the one you got.
Yes.
Just tell us, go back to that moment. What did it feel like when you secured yourself pupillage?
I was actually in India. I was driving. And the call came, but I'm not trying to say that pick up calls during your driving. So I pulled up to the side, got out, and the person on the phone said, Gaurav, I love making these phone calls, and I'm making one to you today. You've got the pupillage. and I didn't shout, I didn't scream. It was like a weight had lifted off me, and it just felt okay. I've done it. I've got to this stage. Now, how do I move forward?
Yeah.
And that's consistent with how I feel personally, uh, when I get to different stages. Even after I got my first class, it wasn't let's go party, let's go get drunk. It was more of okay, weight has lifted off me. I have completed what I set out to do. Same with bar course results. Same with pupillage. Same with getting the tenancy decision. Consistently, it's been I've passed the threshold. What next?
And a tenancy decision, obviously, that's the stage you get your final practicing certificate. Just tell us, I appreciate we're probably going to run out of time quite soon, but pupillage, day one, you turn up at your chambers. What happens? What do you do?
I was given a brief to write an opinion in 4 days, and I was given a deadline.
Don't tell me £1,000, 1,000-page brief.
Not 1,000 page, but it was about 150. I remember it was employment tax. And just to point out for everyone, I've never studied tax. I'm actually studying tax right now at King's College London, doing a part-time LLM.
Are you?
But at that stage, I'd never studied tax. So I went back to the basics. What do you do with an opinion that has a deadline of 4 days? You start researching. You start researching about the opinion. You first set out what the problems are, what you need to answer. What does your research show? Legislation, case law, academic writing, and you compile that into the opinion. Like I trained at ICA, and I got distinctions in my opinion writing, so I was fine. So
I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased to hear that. So, did I was going to ask you actually? Did anything that you did on your bar training course come in to be of practical use to you, either during pupillage or indeed right now in your early years of professional practice?
Yes, and it was particularly the subjects that I liked the most, and that translate into practice at the tax bar. Opinion writing
Yeah.
being the most important one. The first 4 days I was writing an opinion. I've written 3 or 4 opinions since then, which have been extremely long, 30 pages or 40 pages. And you have to be very, very analytical especially in tax cases, because each and every fact can change what assessment you have of the liability of a person, or the feasibility of the structure that you're advising on. So opinion writing and the skills I gained from opinion writing were perhaps the most important for me. And I enjoyed opinion writing from the start. It's been one of the things that I've been very good at since law school, because you write problem questions in law school, you do opinion writing at bar school. So the things that I learned: research, finding, setting out what questions you need to answer, giving an assessment, giving a conclusion. And I followed the exact same pattern every time in pupillage. I follow the exact same pattern even now when I'm writing opinions. But on the other side of that, cross-examination isn't featured in my practice at all. So yes, I did it during power school because it's mandatory and you have to do it. But I've never cross-examined anyone in my pupillage or my sort of practice up until now. But what we did internally in chambers was practicing the cross-examination. But in practical terms, you really don't get to do that at the tax bar.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, there's some areas of practice which, and I'm guessing tax is one of them, where advisory work is going to be the principal, the principal part of your work.
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of that, in pupillage, how often, for example, did you get to court?
I think I was in court with my supervisor 5 times at least.
Yeah.
In the year.
Yeah.
Insolvency court, first year tax tribunal. I was a junior to him in my final month of pupillage.
Oh, wow.
In the first year tax tribunal on a case. and I did get to do advocacy, do my submissions, but there wasn't a cross examination, but there were examination in chief. So I did handle the witness, introduce the evidence, which was good. So compared to, for example, if you remember your pupillage in criminal, where you have to be on your feet all the time,
Absolutely, it's very, very different.
tax
Yeah,
is very
yeah.
different. But one of the things I made sure was to do general county court work in my pupillage in my second six. So with my supervisor for tax, I'd say 5 times or more than that. I didn't have a definitive count, but I did my own cases, stage 3 applications, and small claims,
Yeah,
RTA hearings.
yeah.
I've been in front of district judges. And one of the reasons I did that was I was conscious of the fact tax privileges do not offer you the the chance to do a lot of oral advocacy, to stand up in front of a district judge. That's not possible in a tax privilege. So I did that. I got uh, very good feedback from a district judge, which is I think up on LinkedIn or something, about my advocacy and how I was making jokes and keeping it very light. He quite liked that. So I have, and I did that during my bar course as well with my tutors. So he that is again one of the things that the bar course helped me with. Another thing is the ethics exam, and there's a whole story behind this one. I think you know this. You study for the bar course ethics exam. Yes, it's not centralized by the BSB during your bar course. Yes, make sure you study it properly, because if you're doing a pupillage the year after that, you have another
You
ethics
have
exam
another
to do.
ethics exam. Yeah,
And this is not MCQs. This is actually written answers that
yeah.
you have to do in 3 hours.
Old essay style. Yeah,
Essay style.
answers. Yeah.
What happened with me was, due to some technical difficulties at the center I was, I couldn't access the handbook. Now, mind you, the exam is supposed to be open book for the BSB during your pupillage, but because I had done so much studying on ethics, I remembered everything I had memorized.
Just to let people know, the document being referred to is the Bar Standards Board Handbook, and that contains the code of conduct.
Yes.
That's the document you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's supposed to be available to students during your pupillage ethics exam.
Absolutely.
Due to technical difficulties, it wasn't for people at my center, and there was a bit of ruckus over that. But I had memorized everything because I had prepared so extensively for my bar course exams, and even after that. So I think I heard from someone that people actually failed that exam at that time. The BSB obviously was in touch with them. They were very nice in making sure we weren't very anxious, but I passed it. I passed that exam without.
Congratulations. I mean, you could have probably got mitigating circumstances if you hadn't passed it in those circumstances, but nonetheless, you passed it anyway.
Yeah, but I think most of the students got the extenuating circumstances. The BSB was very upfront with them. But I wanted to pass it because I'm an international student, and I not only have to look at all these things, which each and every student pursuing the bar has to, I have visa compliance, visa deadlines, conditions that I have to satisfy so that the bar council can sponsor me.
Okay.
And has sponsored me now, and for the foreseeable future, so that I can stay in this country and practice. So that was my main concern, rather than this element of the bar. So.
Well, I mean, that again is another very positive part of your overall story, and it takes us to the stage, as you've already mentioned. You got tenancy,
Yes.
so you successfully passed through your pupillage, and now we are in this beautiful room here in Burnell Chambers, 1A Middle Temple Lane. I had to memorize that as I came down, but a beautiful part of the temple, and. This is a new Chambers, isn't it?
It is a new Chambers, yes.
I remember I've been in a similar situation where, very, very different reasons, I'm sure, but set up a new set of chambers. There's something really inspirational about that, the feeling about it. I want to end this by just asking you this, Gaurav. What are your hopes and ambitions for the future? What do you see now from this early stage of your career? Do you see where you're going, or are you going to take the same approach where you see what happens and
Yeah.
just go with it?
First of all, I'd like to say it is a very beautiful place, and I love coming to Chambers because for people who are watching us and not just listening, behind Chris is the Royal Courts of Justice, and you can see them from the windows of our chambers, and you can see Fleet Street. So it's
Hear it too, I think.
you
So I
can hear
apologise for that,
you
everyone.
can hear it too. Yes, but it's I think one of the best parts of being a barrister is being in this historical place. Now, in terms of what do I see for the future, is expanding my practice. Expanding my practice to the extent that I can compete with people who've already established. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not declaring an open challenge to anybody, but that's how I see it. And it's difficult to expand practice if you don't have technical expertise in tax, which is why I'm doing the LLM.
Yeah.
Once I have the academic, holistic understanding of tax law, by the way, I should mention it's taught by barristers at King's College. So once I get that, I have the tools to solve problems, make my own clients. Now, how does my future plan come into with the new set of chambers? I made a conscious conscious decision to accept tenancy at a new set of chambers rather than an established set, because you get your instructions because you're good, not because you come from a chambers that's already established.
Mm.
If I was at a chambers that was already established with the clerks, with extremely good barristers, I would perhaps get some of my instructions because I'm at that chambers. But over here, I have to work sort of twice as hard to get the instructions. But I know if I do a good job, the next time around, they're going to come back to me because I did a good job, not because the name of the chambers. And that's one of the things that I took into consideration when accepting tenancy. That's not to say that down the line the chambers won't be established. It's established even now. But I just wanted to build my own client base and have that throughout my career. And the best way to do that is to stand on your own 2 feet and struggle, essentially, instead of being handed down the work. And I am being handed down the work here. So I feel hypocritical saying that. But there's an element where I am more aggressively marketing over here than I would at the best set in the country.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to ask you this question. I keep saying we're running out of time, but it's fascinating speaking to you. Uh, you're still a young man. There's no question about that. But you've done a lot, it seems to me. Just the fact that you're in pupillage and you're in tenancy and you're doing a master's at the same time, for example. That's a great way of getting a lot in over a relatively short period of time. Going back to that 17-year-old young man that you told me about, who made their decision having enjoyed suits, and here you are in the specialist tax bar. It wasn't a wonderful story. But is there anything you would do differently? What would you say to your 17-year-old self now? What have you learned in the process that perhaps you might do differently, or perhaps nothing at all?
I think I had to go through all the things to become the person I am today. So I wouldn't change anything.
Mm.
In the sense, yes, there's a lot of anxiety. Yes, there's a lot of doubt when you're trying to apply for pupillages. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe somebody else will get it. What will happen if I have to go back to my home and start all over again in a different country to build my practice? So I think I take the view I had to go through that to become the person I am today, who's composed and sort of confident and comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, and you very much seem to be. And I think sometimes things seem to happen for a reason, don't they,
Yes.
in life? Let me ask you one more thing. A lot of people listening to this podcast will be thinking, can I achieve the same as Gaurav has? Can I go into perhaps tax as a specialism, whatever the specialism may be? And they'll be looking at the process as you did doing their degree, whether they do a law degree or not, going into their bar training, going into pupillage, and then of course, hopefully getting that prize tenancy and going into practice. What advice would you give to someone, again, perhaps back at the beginning, who's thinking about a career as a barrister? What would you say to someone in that position right now?
I think it's a two-part question. One is, can you do it? Yes, anybody can. If I can, anybody can. Because I never thought I'd be a barrister. I didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge like traditionally people who become barristers do. I went to Cardiff.
Yeah.
I didn't do a master's, and I didn't have to wait any time, or sort of, I didn't have a waiting time before I got pupillage. So I've got extremely lucky. So anybody can if they want to work hard enough. And what's the one advice? If you really want it, and that comes back to sitting down with yourself and actually asking what you want, and if you really want to pursue it, if you really want to pursue it, it's hard work. So you have to be perhaps obsessed with it. Every sort of waking moment of my time in my third year and my bar school, I was doing something that was building my CV. And that's extreme. And I recognize that now when I think after 8 o'clock, I'm not picking up any calls. I'm not answering any emails. I need the time to myself. And I have the privilege to do that now. But back then, I was obsessed with the idea of getting to the bar and bringing to reality what I had visualized in my head. So if you think you want to do it and you've asked yourself, spoken to yourself about it, just be obsessed and you'll get it. You'll get it maybe 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line. But I think the answer is, and the point to everything is, you just have to keep pushing forward. You just have to keep moving forward. That's it, regardless of what happens in the moment. You might not get into the chambers you want. You might not get into the university you want. You might not get tenancy the first time around or pupillage the first time around, like most people do. But the point is to put the blinders on near your eyes and just keep going forward. That's it. And you'd be surprised at how quickly everything spirals upwards and takes you to the place you want to be.
No, I think you exemplified dedication and commitment.
Yeah.
Gaurav, thank you
Thank
so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much to Gaurav for that. We will be returning, as we will every Friday. Again, we will be interviewing many really quite, I think, amazing people on this podcast. Gaurav exemplifies that perfectly. So, Gaurav, thank you again. And thank you to everyone. I'll see you next week.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for having me.